guys, welcome back to another episode of the Whisky Diaries. Today we're on tour in a very, very special distillery, Highland Park, inside the actual pagoda roof, which is an incredible opportunity that we got. We got lucky. Unfortunately, they didn't get us lucky, because the only reason why we can do this is because unfortunately about 5 months ago there was a truck accident that basically destroyed a lot of the pipes in a lot of the distillery. So they haven't been producing spirit for 5 months. They lost about 500,000 litres of whiskey, and it's very, very sad to see. But fortunately, that gives us a very rare opportunity to see a lot of changes and a lot of things that happen in this amazing and stunning distillery. As you know, we're doing this part of our tour that we're going all through Scotland, just visiting distilleries and doing reviews on the tour itself. So today we're not going to go too much of the history in this distillery and say a couple of interesting stories that we got told by our tour guide. His name is Keith. He did an amazing job. He's been at the distillery for 3 years. Absolutely stunning person. He looked after us, a world of knowledge, so much information that as always I took a lot of notes, and I'm going to have a look at them here and there just to make sure that I pass on the information. Now, the distillery in itself was legally established in 1798. Before that, the gentleman who established the distillery is Magnus Egenson. He was a church official, and he was distilling illegal spirits in the location itself where we are now. The funny part, the interesting story that we got told is basically he used to carry and do about 10 funerals a day, and inside the casks were supposed to be dead people, it was actually whiskey. He also had a massive vantage point over the whole of Orkney, so he can see anybody coming in and out from miles away. So that gave him a great opportunity, and that's why it took so long to catch him making illegal spirits. But once he got caught, he basically paid his fine. He got arrested, but eventually he established and got legally distilling by 1978. The whiskey itself, most of it is done in the distillery. We'll go to that in a little bit. The trip here was insane. So we drove all the way from Darstown. We got the ferry. We drove at night, and then just walking through Orkney itself it's an incredible island. And I highly recommend, if you ever come to Scotland and you want to do distillery tours, take the time to come to this place, because it's something out of this world. I thought I knew a lot about distilleries, and I thought I've seen a few, which I have, but I have never seen anything like this. So anyway, let's go back into the basics. The place is run, most of it is run manually. There's 25 people working in the distillery itself at any given time. So it's quite labor intensive. They do a lot of the malting here. About 20% of the malting gets done here. So they have 3 malting floors in which they're all manually. There's no machinery at all. It takes about 7 days just to produce one malt. The rest of the malt comes from Inverness, so it's not too far away. This will be about 2.5 hour drive, so it's not too bad, except that you have to take the ferry. Now, the interesting part about Highland Park, and this is something that maybe you know, maybe you don't, but it's just the peat. The peat that they use to dry the barley is actually Orkney peat, which is heavily infused with heather. If you compare it to something from Islay, the peat there has a lot of wood decay that goes through from the trees falling, and basically over the course of 3,000 years, the wood seeps down into the peat. Now here, because of the high winds up to 160 kilometers per hour, about 70 to 80 miles per hour, there's no trees. The trees get blown away. So what you get in this peat is actually heather. A lot of the decaying heather goes into the peat and actually absorbs, and this produces a very, very particular type of smoke. It's a more floral, softer smoke that you will get in Islay, so it's not as heavy. Now, obviously, they have a kiln. We are here in the pagoda roof, and the kiln underneath us is supposed to be the new kiln, but it's over 100 years old. In their own kiln, actually, they just keep it open because every season they got a flock of birds that nest there that are called the swallows, and basically they allow it in the distillery. People actually get really happy when they're here, and then they leave. Usually the distillery is closed, but they keep that kiln open for the bird to come in and out, which is a really, really cute story about the distillery itself. Now, the mill is a Portus mill from 1947, which is a second-hand mill that was from Scapa when at the time that Scapa was closed. They do a 15% flour, 65 to 70% grist, and then another 15% of the husk as a ratio. Basically, that's pretty much about the mill. They put all the barley here in the pagoda roof, then they mill it, and basically off you go into the mash tuns. The mash basically is a stainless steel mash. So we've got a mash tun that is one stainless steel, 29,000 liters. They do only 3 waters, which is 62 degrees. The first water, the second water comes at 80 degrees, and then the last water 90 degrees. That basically, that's the sparge that gets discarded, used for farmers and cattle feed and so on. They don't have a biomass plant here, so everything gets done to the farmers. Now the washbacks, this is actually quite interesting. The washbacks, they have 12 of them, and they're exactly the same size as a mash tun. They do about 26 mashes a week, so that means that they do 1 mash, and then they put it into the washback, 1, and so on and so on. Now, this is a story, Keith couldn't confirm if it's true or not, but the story going around the distillery is that during the Second World War, like many distilleries around Scotland, Highland Park was closed. Now, obviously, you got the 29,000 litre fermentation tanks as a huge. Apparently, they used to use it to bathe and clean the Italian prisoner during the Second World War, which is a crazy story if you get to think about it. So, if you find, the joke that Keith made was, if you find any whiskies during the Second World War, it will have a characteristic taste to it. Obviously, not true because they weren't making any whiskey, but anyway. Then basically the distillery makes 2.7 million litres of spirit a year. It is not a lot, but it's a fair bit compared to places that would be like Glenronach or Glenglassaugh that they do 1.2 mil. So it's still a fair bit. The fermentation tanks are actually at the moment, until now, they were made out of pine wood. Once they restart distilling, they're planning to upgrade them to stainless steel. When we were there were actually one of them that was already getting refurbished and taken out, which is good. To be honest, pine wood, a lot of distilleries take pride in the pine wood being part of the fermentation process because they reckon that interacts with the liquid itself. But to be honest, it costs more trouble than it's worth, and stainless steel produces very, very similar, exactly the same. It's negligible what you can get the difference between pine wood and stainless steel. It's more romantic, it seems more nicer, but at the end of the day, the result of the spirit will be exactly the same. Now, the stills are you've got 2 wash stills, 2 spirit stills. The wash stills is 14,600 litres. The spirit stills is 9,000 litres. The heart of the spirit that they make is about 16%. They put 18,000 litres in the 2 spirit stills, and only 3,000 litres come out, which is actually a pretty small heart as well. The neutral spirit that they do comes with this. They had a really good graphic there that they showed us that they basically explain what this still does in flavour profile. So you got the highest stills in Scotland that are from Glenmorangie, produce a light floral spirit. Then Highland Park comes in the middle between Macallan, and it produces a sweet floral spirit as well. So it's kind of like a mix between the two of them, and you can actually taste that in any of the Highland Parks. You can take floral notes at the same time that you taste more sweetness. Now, the Cooperage, this is another very, very interesting part out of Highland Park. They have the Cooperage, they work with the Cooperage in this south of Spain, southern Spain. So they don't have a Cooperage down the road, it's not like Space Out that they use this Space Out. Cooperage is mainly that they use it in southern Spain, and it actually makes sense because they get a lot of the barrels that are basically sherry barrels. So it makes no sense to get the barrels here, work them, then sell them, send them back to Spain, fill them up with sherry, and then send it back. You know what I mean? So what they did is they struck a deal with the guys over there, and then they get Oloroso sherry and American oak. The American oak comes from Haven Hills, that is a bourbon from Tennessee. gets shipped to southern Spain. They fix them, or they redo them, or recharge them, or toast them up to Highland Park standards, and then they send them here to Orkney. It's a quite long trip for the barrels to make, but it seems to work for them, which is really, really good. They have 23 warehouses in total. 19 of them are Dunnigan standard warehouse, which are the 3 rows max, brick, stone, and basically cement. And then they have 4 racked warehouses. Those are the bigger ones that are like basically kind of similar to what we saw at Old Pulteney. Now, 46,000 barrels on site, and the interesting part, and this is really good, I guess, for the profits of the company. The angel shares in this island is very, very low. Like in Speyside and in Dufftown, they're looking about 2 to 2.5% per year. These guys are less than 1% a year of whiskey that they'll lose. The warehouse are absolutely beautiful. They have all the aging shell moss. The tour in itself, you can take pictures, you can go anywhere, you can see everything. As you can see, we're filming inside the pagoda roof. It's really, 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 really good sight to see. After that, sorry, I forgot to mention that the tour that we're doing is called the Orcadian Vintage Tour. It's a very, very special tour. It's about £300 per person. So it's quite expensive, but what you get it's incredible. So the tour, once you finish the tour, to start with, I forgot to mention as well that you're greeted with a nip of whiskey in the video room. So they show you an initial video showing just a general idea of what Orkney does. They give you a special distillery edition, 14-year-old, cask strength at 64% ABV, just to start the day, which is a great way to start a whiskey distillery tour. And it's very different to any other distillery tours that I've done. Nobody really starts just by giving you a nip of whiskey. Then after that, we went to the warehouse number 12, and we actually tasted a whiskey directly from the barrel. Keith actually grabbed a pipette and just took, and we just drank out of the barrel. In this particular case, it was a 17-year-old refill sherry butt. Is a decanted barrel. So this whiskey used to be in another barrel that broke, so they put it into that barrel, and then we actually got to taste it. The warehouse, this one again is a bonded warehouse. Keith had to do a lot of paperwork while we were drinking the whiskey. So it was a great experience. So I know that £300 is a lot of money, but what you get if you love your whiskey, this is a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity and experience. After that, and this is what is basically what takes the cake, is the whiskies that we tried at the end of the tour. I just have no words for it. It's just phenomenal. So we get to try basically 4 decades. Well, not 4 decades, but 4 whiskies. One is from 1976, 1971, 1970, and 1968. The 1976 is a 35-year-old. The rest of the 3 were 40 years old. One interesting fact is like most of the distillery tours, all the distillery tours that I've done, they know a lot about the wood and they tell you exactly what casks. In this particular tour, we didn't. What Keith told us is that the only person who knows exactly what barrel is used for each whiskey is the master distiller, or the whiskey master as they call them here. So even in the notes that you get when you open the box of these beautiful whiskies and stuff, it doesn't tell you exactly. What it does tell you is that the only whiskey that they do tell the stuff if it's a first fill. But because these whiskies are so old, they guarantee you, they cannot tell you in the book says, if it would have been a first fill, this whiskey would be too stringent because it's too old. So all these barrels are actually second fill barrels. You can taste, by the way, which is actually, it was very interesting because on the notes, because you don't know the barrel exactly, you actually kind of like entice your brain just to think a little bit more about the whiskey that you drink and trying to guess, I guess. So it makes you more connected to the whiskey itself and what you're tasting. So if from our notes, we could sort of guess which one was a more sherry heavy and more bourbon heavy. So the 1976, which was a 35-year-old married from 13 different sherry and American butts, hogsheads. They were refilled with 49.1%. 893 bottles, and you can definitely tell that it was a little bit sherry forward. There was a little bit of oak notes in the whiskey in itself, like you get your vanilla, your butterscotch, but it wasn't more, you get more spicy fruits like dry apricots, dry raisins, Christmas pudding and so on. Those are classics. The other whiskey, the 1971, that it was 46.9% ABV. This was 17 cask married as a refill barrel, only 657 bottles ever made, and it was a 40-year-old. This was 100% sherry casks, no doubt about it. The color, the taste, everything, the tannics at the back of the palate, all the Christmas puddings, the raisins, all these flavors, nutmeg, cinnamon, the spicy flavors that you get from sherry cask were all there. I could not taste any flavor from American barrels. The last two barrels in 1970 and 1968 were definitely more bourbon dominant. The 48%, the 1970 was 48% with 7 refill barrels, and it basically, all you can taste is your vanillas, your toffees, your butterscotch, apples, like fresh notes. It was a lot more grassy. Even the color of the whiskey was almost like greenish looking. And then the final one that it was in 1968 was 45.6%, 7 hogshead and 1 butt. So it's a 40-year-old, and this one definitely, absolutely 100% bourbon as well. Under my opinion, again, if you actually get the chance to try any of these whiskies, you will build, as always I tell you to build your own opinion on your whiskies. We can only give you hints of what you can enjoy. Basically, that's about it about the distillery itself. Again, I cannot recommend it enough. The place is amazing. There's so much history here. There's so much going on. The views are insane. We got to go outside the pagoda roof and overlook of all of Orkney. It was a very, very special tour. We felt really, really spoiled with this experience. And I feel like anybody that comes here would do as well. Keith was adamant that they love what they do, and they love interacting with new people and showing what Highland Park is and the family that they are and how much passion there is. And it actually was very sad to see the destruction that this truck made. There's a lot of the stills were completely on the stilts, not on the stilts, sorry, on the crates just to fix the whole distillery. The new pipes were being laid. Everybody was working. You couldn't hear the humming of the distillery being done. You couldn't smell it as well, which is that distillery smell of fermentation and distilling and all that stuff. You didn't get any of that. But in saying that, it could be a blessing in disguise, because the next couple of years for Macallan is going to be really interesting. They're going to rebuild a lot, and they're going to keep doing an insanely excellent whiskey. Now, without just that, we finished the review. As always, we're going to review one of the whiskies, which is the one that we got given in the beginning of the tour. It's a cask strength 14-year-old. Again, it's a refill butt. They don't tell you what it is, but by the color, you can sort of see that there's a fair bit of sherry involved in this one. 63.8% ABV, which is really, really great whiskey to warm up your chest at the 11 o'clock in the morning, which we did not complain. I'll pick that up. Sorry. There we go. Want to leave any remains. There we go. And then, there we go. Excellent. Yeah, you can definitely, obviously, note the Highland Park. This is those sweet aromas, those floral notes that you get from the new make in itself comes through. And this is something great about Highland Park, because you can definitely, a lot of distilleries sometimes, the new make and the spirit itself, the heart of it gets lost between all that aging and all that stuff. All of the Highland Parks that I ever try, it has a really strong character and a really strong identification. I'm pretty sure you can, out of a blind tasting, you can pick a Highland Park if you drink it enough. Whoa. As I said, 64% ABV. Really puts hair to your chest. So I recommend to add a few drops of water to the whiskey if you can. Otherwise, I think after a couple of sips, your whole mouth will go numb because of the alcohol content. But you can definitely taste the sherry, the spicy notes. Once you get used to the warmth, the aroma starts coming back through the back of your palate. So you start really smelling those sherry, even a bit of bourbon in here as well, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of toffee going through. So it's a great whiskey distillery only, so you can only get it here, and it comes in a lovely little handmade bag that you can take. People are amazing, the town is amazing, the drive, everything. Even if you just fly over here, the whole island, then the ruins, the tourist side of things, and obviously the distillery being what it is, an incredible whiskey. The tour guides, the people, all the workers, everybody was so nice, so welcoming. So cannot recommend it enough. Guys, that's it for us. If you have any questions, any requests, anything that you want to add to the video, if you want us to talk more about it, let us know. We're happy to oblige. And then we'll see you next time. Now I'm going to keep drinking this whiskey inside this amazing room. And then we'll see you next time. Slàinte mhath.